We're back with more NFL coverage, and we're doing the week 2 recap here. So to start things out between the Commanders and the Packers. Coming into this one, both teams had pretty, not gonna say completely easy wins, but they definitely started their seasons off on the right foot. And this is going to be a battle between two really good offenses in theory. And it would be a challenge, at least, for the Packers defense to get adjusted to it. But the Packers would start with the ball first, and honestly, this drive in and of itself would set the tone for a lot of what would happen on this night. I mean, obviously, Josh Jacobs is a running back who's going to need a lot of volume to get going. He doesn't really have to take over ball games for them. But when the time calls, you know he's going to be able to get his. So they wouldn't really run him all roughshod to start out this game. But what they would do is constantly attack Marshon Lattimore. I could not believe how many times on this drive, and honestly for the rest of this game, he would be in the middle of either allowing somebody to catch the ball when he's manned up on them or in a zone, or with him consistently getting picked on and penalized for defensive holding and pass interference. It was just hard to watch. And to think that they got this man at the trade deadline last season, thinking that he was going to be a large boost to a defense that was middle of the pack. This is not a good return on that investment. Now, it is just one game and a few draws, but my goodness, it was hard to watch. Nevertheless, they were going to get right down into Commanders territory. And Jordan Love was going to be aggressive in this one. He would go for it on fourth down. They're on the Commanders' 33-yard line. And he has the greatest chance to hit Matthew Golden on a post route. But he underthrows it. And it's like, you missed that pass? I'm like, you gotta be more accurate in that situation. Golden had the man beat. It would have been a touchdown. But he gave the defender a fighting chance to knock it back out. So that would be an uneventful first possession. For the Packers, at least. The Commanders, I can just tell you right now, for a while, they were completely locked up by this Packers defense. They were. I mean, everybody was flying all over the place. Like, it helps that Devontae Wyatt was able to get a sack on this drive and eventually force the Commanders into a 3-and-out to start off the game. And then the Packers would get it all going again. Jordan Love would immediately respond with a few dots, of course. Tucker Kraft would have himself a night. In just 2 plays on this possession, he would get 2 receptions for combined 72 yards, including a 57-yard run and catch down the field to get them into Commanders' territory and essentially the red zone. Before you knew it, Jordan Love was out here on an ensuing third down in the drive, truck sticking somebody and getting out of bounds before throwing an easy slant route to Romeo Doubs from 5 yards out for a touchdown. It just kept being rough for the Commanders, to say the least. And honestly, I'll probably reiterate it when I get into, extra commentary at the end of this game, right? They are so fucking deep on defense. Obviously, Micah Parsons was a big fish to go out and get via trade that not a lot of people were able to see coming. But still, you have Rashawn Gary and Quay Walker, for instance, getting involved on this play right here to stop Austin Eckler short, forcing them into a third and much longer, where you then have Javon Ballard just absolutely flying all over the field, starting with this tackle right here, before they punt it yet again. Now, things would remain a little slower for the Packers here. The Commanders were doing as best as they could to hang in there, and Von Miller would at least get in the backfield for a half sack along with Jacob Martin to eventually force a 3-and-out for them. But man, the offense for the Commanders had absolutely no response whatsoever. Like, the Packers were in a certain kind of scheme the entire night that essentially forced Jayden Daniels to settle for short pass after short pass. And whenever he tried to go for deep shots, including this one to Noah Brown, it failed. It took him a long time in this game to complete a single pass over 10 air yards. And by a certain point, while he was accurate in terms of completion, when it came to pushing the ball down the field, he was not successful, to say the least. Packers would start heating up later on in the second quarter, because anytime you can have Jordan Love just launch another off-balance throw, off-platform throw over to the sideline, where only the receiver can get it, and you have backup wide receiver Malik Heath being able to locate the ball, catch it, and get both of his feet inbounds. Mind you, this pass is going all the way over to the left side of the field. And yet Jordan Love has enough strength to just work it over there. Heath, with the elite concentration, holds it in, and that play was challenged. It would be overturned. They would be given the catch. And they just kept it going, because Romeo Doubs would get another 17-yard catch, and Tucker Kraft would also follow that up within a few plays with yet another 17-yard catch before Josh Jacobs punched it in, extending his hold on the franchise record for consecutive games with a rushing touchdown. How insane is that? Like, oh my goodness. You have to respect it. Again, the fact that Josh Jacobs is on the market like this and the Packers were able to just go out and get him changed a lot for this offense. And it does help a guy like Jordan Love. Obviously, he's been waiting for all this time to show what he's truly made of. But even being in this position, even if you trust him to lead you to the promised land, right? You're not necessarily putting it all on his shoulders when you have a reliable enough running back like Josh Jacobs in your backfield. That is something that cannot be underestimated whatsoever about this team. The Commanders would start to drive a little bit. Terry McLaurin would get involved for one of his first times in the night, and they would also give Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a few runs on this drive here. And it would help them get at least one third down conversion here. But yet again, when it came time for him to throw up a deep shot, this pass to Terry McLaurin was nowhere near his area code. And as a result, they had to settle for fourth down, with Matt Gay punching it in from 51 yards out to get them on the board for the first time tonight. Now, shit to end off the second quarter and open up the third would get really weird. It did help mightily that the Commanders would force a 3-and-out, although it wasn't without a little bit of wackiness on the part of the Packers. They would get a fucking rushing play to Xavier Williams, the gadget player out of TCU that they drafted this year. They got him going with a fucking run akin to how the Commanders would probably be trying to use Deebo Samuel, and also how the 49ers did when he was there. They were literally lined up in the Deebo package with Xavier Williams right over there to the right of Jordan Love. And I'm like, yeah, he kind of projects to be this kind of wide receiver, honestly, with how he's been utilized at TCU all this time. But my goodness, like, they ain't trying to hide it either. I mean, damn, you know. But it still wasn't eventful enough for him. Before you know it, though, the Commanders would get short field But after this lane punt return, they couldn't move the ball enough. Still, Matt Gay lines up, attempts to go for a 58-yarder, and he clanks it off the upright, giving the Packers a chance to respond in their own way, which is exactly what you didn't want to do if you were the Commanders in this position. They had been radio silent on offense all night long. You needed to try to enter the second half with some form of momentum. But even the Packers wouldn't capitalize on that, because in the same vein, Brandon McManus would miss his field goal to end off the half. Now, we get into the third quarter, and I mean, it started off as well as you could have if you were the Commanders. You got a great return, a grand advantage in field position, and still, not only do you end up losing yardage on a third down because of the pressure from both Edgerrin Cooper and Micah Parsons, yet another Packers player that I'd mention here who had a masterful night. And again, scary part is, not only could he be utilized as an edge rusher with Lucas Van Ness also being rotated in that position, they had Edgerrin Cooper out in coverage. That's how versatile that linebacking core can be for Green Bay. It's a scary sight. Nevertheless, Matt Gay would line up for yet another field goal in the stretch and missed again. And at that point, I'm like, what the fuck? Okay. 3 straight missed field goals from both teams in this sequence. How incompetent do you have to be? Yeah, a 58-yarder is always going to be tough for most kickers. Matt Gay doesn't have that strong of a leg. But when you're getting into shorter and shorter territory and you're still finding new creative ways to miss, that's a heavy fucking problem. But essentially, the Packers would get right back to it. Luke Musgrave, kind of subbing out Tucker Kraft a little bit, letting him rest up. He'd been working hard, and for Musgrave to be a backup in this position is a little bit tough. There was a time in which, he was the unquestioned starter. But Kraft, you have to credit him. Even though they would both pull their weight on this drive, Kraft has just emerged as something special for this team. For him to come from such a small school and make a name for himself in this league at this time is definitely something special. And his contributions, his work would eventually lead the Packers to kick a field goal here to take a 17-3 lead. It was more the same for this Packers defense. They just made life a living nightmare for the Commanders. I mean, their greatest strength, even with Jayden Daniels proving to be an efficient passer last season, their greatest strength was going to be their rushing attack, and yet it was completely limited. Austin Eckler couldn't do anything. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, even though he got a few runs, they weren't enough, and Jayden Daniels would usually be the driving force in a situation like this to make up for that lack of supposed talent in that backfield. He could not run anywhere. And if he did get a little bit of space, they were met with immediate consequences. They were right on him all night long. And they forced enough pressure on this third down to force another incomplete pass attempted for Terry McLaurin to force another 3-and-out. While the Commanders' defense, again, they did as best as they could. Eventually, you're going to get tired out. But Josh Jacobs was also limited on this drive, being held to just a couple gains for 2 yards. Not really dominant. Packers would go 3-and-out here, and then the fourth quarter would open. And you got to credit them when the Commanders absolutely needed a drive. They got down in around 5 minutes. He had to still keep everything fairly short. So even though these plays to Zach Ertz would be around 10 yards each to start out this drive. There wasn't much explosiveness going on. They would be bailed out on an ensuing fourth down because they had Nate Hobbs for the Packers guarding Zach Ertz for some reason. And again, I think Nate Hobbs was a great addition for them, given what they've lost in this offseason. But to have him guarding Zach Ertz, even at this stage of his career, that almost felt like a mismatch, and the holding penalty would make that very clear. McLaurin would also pick up a third down gain later on in the drive before they found Zach Ertz on a creative play. They had him lined up deep in the backfield, and they essentially hit him. So once he leaked out in space, there was nobody guarding him. The pass was relatively short, but Zach Ertz from there was able to just weave his way around the defense and get all the way over to the left side of the field for a touchdown to make it a 17-10 ball game. At that point, you're thinking that there's a little bit of a sign of life here, and that the Commanders, if they can get a stop, might be in prime position to at least tie the ball game within just a few drives. Yet, the Packers had a response of their own almost immediately, because yet again, for whatever reason, Marshawn Lattimore couldn't cover fucking Dontavion Wicks. Like, he was torching him all game, just running some of the crispier routes imaginable, and completely leaving Lattimore dazed and confused. I legitimately didn't understand it. It was insane to watch. It was insane to watch, man. And I don't know. They would get very creative. They would still have Savion Williams yet again, this time in Wildcat formation, run it, and he had a great amount of space to even score a touchdown if he wanted to. He tripped up on his own feet. But they would get creative with Matthew Golden as well. I mean, he'd gotten at least a few catches at this point, but the chemistry in terms of hitting him on deep shots wasn't all there. So they decided, hey, we're just going to give him a jet sweep play, a little end around to get him going, and he got 9 yards off that. It's all clean. Once they got in Commanders' territory, it was over from there, and Tucker Kraft would be able to get an 8-yard touchdown from there. What a fucking night for him, by the way. And again, I'll get to the numbers in a bit, but geez, like, he absolutely torched them and set an interesting precedent for this Packers franchise. And when it comes to the tight end position. But as for the Commanders, one of their final signs of true life would be thwarted yet again. Keyshawn Nixon on this fourth down had immaculate coverage on Jalen Lane, and he was able to force the incompletion to end the turnover on downs by and large. Packers offense really wasn't all that worried about doing too much at that point. You know the Packers defense has been hanging in there for this much time. You have enough faith in them to go out and prevent them from doing what it is that they have to do on their end. So you can live with taking a field goal here, which they would do to go up 27-10. Yeah, on the ensuing possession, the Commanders would score a touchdown. They just tried to run with as much tempo as possible, getting some plays to Terry McLaurin, and also Deebo Samuel Sr. and even Luke McCaffrey, before he would hit Deebo Samuel on a little bit of a crossing route from 10 yards out, and also get the 2-point conversion. Yet still, when push came to shove, it still was not enough. It still was not enough. They tried to see if they could make something happen on this last possession, but again, you know how difficult it would be to not only score a touchdown in the 2-point conversion here, but also get an onside kick and then try to do the same thing again. That's what the Commanders would need to do in order to come back from this game. And they got the ball with just 1 minute and 47 seconds left. They didn't have a lot of timeouts at their disposal at all. In fact, they didn't even have any. So the game was as good as over from there. And once they would pick up this first down, you get another incomplete pass, a string of 3 straight incomplete passes, in fact, including a pretty unexplainable one. Again, short passes, the fact that you would progressively fail to hit those over the course of the game has to hurt. And from there, Packers would just go on to win the game 27-18. Like, they suffocated this Commanders offense for a majority of the game. Although, before I get into numbers and extra stuff, I should also note that Austin Ekeler, on one of the final possessions, did go down with what would be determined to be a season-ending Achilles injury per Adam Schefter. Like, the second it happened, the fact that it was a non-contact injury as he was going out in the flatten, all of that stuff, like, you immediately thought that it was going to be that. You would hope that it wasn't. But again, we've seen that before. We've seen it in the NBA, and those have turned out to be season enders. So, even though trying to be as optimistic as you can, it's really hard to be. And they would make that decision within just a few hours following this. So, hopefully he can actually spend that time getting the best recovery available to him and being able to recover fully from this. As for the numbers for both squads, we'll just start out with the Packers, yeah? Jordan Love had 292 yards and 2 touchdowns on 61.3% completion. Josh Jacobs had 84 rushing yards and a touchdown. But my man, Tucker Kraft, let's talk about it. 6 catches and 124 yards and a touchdown for him. In fact, his night was so prolific that it not only set a career high for him, but he also had the most yards receiving by a Packers tight end since Richard Rodgers in 2015. Old Packers fans would definitely have an understanding of that A-Rod to Richard Rodgers connection back in the day. And the fact that they've had a slew of tight ends since, a slew of very interesting tight ends that have become well acquainted with Aaron Rodgers for a number of different reasons. And they'd never reached that kind of level of contribution in any such game is pretty fucking crazy. That is absolutely wild, man. As for the defense, because you have to shout them out as well, man. You had 6 different defenders with at least a half sack in this game. You had 3 players in Ballard, Cooper, and Walker get out there for more than 5 tackles in this game. Evan Williams, even though he's a bit of a weaker cornerback on this team, man, he and Nixon were absolutely clamping shit out there. They didn't let anything get past them. They were doing their job out there. And it was this entire defense just on a fucking heater all night long. And Igbare getting back there for a few pressures. Nixon getting a few swats of his own. He had 5 pass deflections in this game. Think about that shit. They were all over the place. And the fact that they can do that while being able to also stop the run as well just makes it all the more ironic that Jerry Jones decided to trade Micah Parsons away. Because when you look at these numbers for the Commanders right here, Jayden Daniels completed just 57.1% of his passes, which has to be either a career low or his worst mark since the game last season he had against the Bucs. By far one of the worst performances he could have had. And not to mention, just 17 yards for him on the ground on 2.4 yards per carry. In fact, the Commanders' rushing attack as a whole, all 3 of their rushers had just 17 yards. And all 3 of their rushers combined for just 2.7 yards per carry. So when you're being able to speed up a quarterback's clock like that, and you're also able to stop them from using their bread and butter, which is the run game, It made them look way weaker than they ever have in this tenure with Jayden Daniels. And it's absolutely crazy to say that this was a down game for him, but that's exactly how it was. The numbers may not even do it justice. Watching this entire thing, he looked completely out of rhythm, and that affected the team as a whole. As for their receiving unit, Zach Ertz had 64 receiving yards and a touchdown on 6 catches. Terry McLaurin had 5 receptions and 48 yards, and Deebo Samuel had a touchdown and 44 receiving yards on 7 catches. Exceptional work by the Packers defense. And while the Commanders could bounce back from it in the week to follow, I mean, they face off against the Raiders. I don't know. They will definitely want to get right on the money with their performance, because if they come out looking the same sluggish way, man, people are probably going to start asking some questions. All right, to move on to this Sunday action and to start out with my Seahawks. All I can say is, I told you they were going to be able to bounce back next week against this team. Even though, again, I had a great chance of watching it live, and it wasn't live because they decided to put on another game, which is going to be the next one that I'm talking about. And honestly, when you look at the way that game panned out, not to spoil anything, you already know at this point, I guess. It actually ended up being a very good game. But, man, I wanted to see my fucking team play. Anyways, they would get stuff going immediately with Sam Darnold actually getting it to Torrey Horton, the rookie wide receiver, for his first NFL catch and touchdown from 21 yards out. While the Steelers would respond, albeit a little more slowly, a little more methodically down the field, yet be stuffed by the Seahawks defense and be forced into a field goal. Seahawks defense definitely hit they were still doing as best as they could. It was the offense that hit a rut for a while after that opening drive touchdown. It did not help that Jalen Ramsey would get an interception against Sam Darnold on the ensuing possession. But still, they held strong, holding them to another 48-yard field goal by Chris Boswell to make it a 7-6 ball game. This was a really weird second quarter, though. I mean, the Seahawks were doing a lot of what they had to do. And at least from the way I was tracking it, I did like to see that Sam Darnold was starting to spread the ball around a little bit more. Now, obviously, by the end of this game, when I get to the numbers, you'll see that Jackson Smith and Jigba, as I said in the last one, he's going to get his. There's no question about that. But you've got to try to distribute the ball around as best as you can. That is the main way an offense of this kind is going to work. And to his credit, although there were a few mistakes on Sam Darnold's end, he did just that. So when you get back-to-back receptions from not only Cooper Kupp, but Elijah Arroyo as well for more than 15 yards a pop, you know you're hitting a little bit of a stride here. And eventually it would pay off for them getting deeper into Steelers territory after picking up a 4th down with A.J. Barner running it up the gut. But they would be stopped, and it would lead into another 4th down in the red zone. And Jason Myers surprisingly missed this one, which is rare for him. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way. But legitimately, he's been one of the more accurate kickers in the league. This was not something that I was concerned about. I would legitimately not have reason to worry about that at all. At least for a while, though, the Seahawks defense, again, doing more than their fair share of work. The Steelers were still very limited in terms of running the ball in this game. And also, in a sort of revenge game, even though DK Metcalf wanted to treat it like another game, you can bet your ass off that he wanted to go out there with something to prove in this game. He was largely limited in this game. He truly was. They did a great job of collectively covering him. Although, again, in just a few possessions, he would still get his. That's besides the point. Seahawks would go and punt the ball yet again before forcing the Steelers into another 3-and-out. And then they would get a decent drive going before Zach Charbonnet would be deterred a little bit by none other than the Ohio State man in Jack Sawyer to get pushed back by 2 yards. Eventually, as Zach Charbonnet would get a lot more of that yardage back, they would get into another 4th-and-1, and they'd be aggressive going for it on 4th down here, which honestly a lot of teams have been trying to do. And he would be intercepted by Nick Herbig again. And it gave them prime field position to go and do something. And do something they did. You know, Metcalf would actually get his first catch on this drive, or at least one of his first catches on this drive. And then, with Kobe Bryant guarding him, he just completely mossed him. Rodgers threw up a fade route to him, and at that point, man, like, Kobe Bryant's definitely a physical safety, but DK Metcalf is just an entirely different beast. I would know. We've already known this for years. Mossed the hell out of him, got the touchdown catch, and they would also get the 2-point conversion to give themselves a 14-7 lead. With that, Aaron Rodgers would also tie, because that was the situation coming into this game. He would tie Brett Favre for all-time touchdowns with 508. The Seahawks would get a little bit of a drive going, but they were not able to get in field goal range, and they were forced to just punt the ball, sending into essentially halftime. But things would pick up and start looking up for the Seahawks to start out the third. And I mean that in every sense of the imagination. Truly. They would force the stop on the Steelers, keeping things as short as possible and limiting the damage before going on a mammoth touchdown drive of their own. Kenneth Walker III looked much, much better in this game. You can also attribute that to better run blocking. I mean, he absolutely torched this defense. Back-to-back gains at 9 and 15 yards to start out this drive. And then, yet again, Sam Darnold just distributing the ball all over the place. Elijah Arroyo with a 7-yard gain. And then Cooper Kupp with back-to-back 17 and 16-yard catches. Before Kenneth Walker and also A.J. Barner would finish off the drive with a touchdown to tie up the ball game. Things could have gotten very disastrous here, as when I watched it in post, this nigga Jaylen Warren literally ran through damn near the entire Seahawks defense. But Tariq Woolen was fast enough to catch him at the 5-yard line after he gained 65 yards off of a routine Aaron Rodgers dump off. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how the hell is that happening? You tie up the ball game, and that's how you come out on defense? It's a little crazy. But the goal line stand was real. Darian Kendrick, backup cornerback that they had in this game, because Devin Witherspoon would be out for this game with an MCL issue, and also is still questionable to return for next week's game, by the way. Just to add that in there. He would manage to get an interception here. And I'm like, damn, okay. If you're going to get a stop like that, I guess you got to live with it. Both teams, though, would not really do much here. They would both go 3-and-out before the Seahawks would open up the fourth quarter with a field goal of their own from 54 yards out. The play of all plays of this week would happen, and Steelers fans have certainly just expressed all of their issues with it. As a Seahawks fan, I was just going to take it. It definitely helped them extend the lead, increasing it by 10. But what happened, if you don't know, is that essentially rookie running back and I guess special teamer in this case, Kaleb Johnson, who had been struggling in that position. I mean, it was a rough go at it for him in the Jets game. We've been through that already. You know what I'm saying? They're giving him another shot here. He gets the kickoff, and it kind of goes right through his hands as he's trying to field it. And after that, he walks off. But everyone else, Steelers guys, and especially the Seahawks men, with George Holani eventually getting in the end zone and getting this, they're running towards the football. It's rolling on back continuously. And if it were to have gone out of the end zone, it probably would have been a safety since he did touch it. But it stopped just a few inches before it went out of the back of the end zone. Holani sprints in there for the easiest fumble recovery and touchdown of his life to do this deed for the Seahawks. Now, again, my estimation of the situation, although people are definitely pissed off about it, and I mean, maybe they have all right to be, you know what I'm saying? As a rookie, he genuinely might not have known that rule. You gotta learn it in time, but I can't necessarily hold that against him. What many people are confused about, as they should be, again, is the fact that you don't hustle for the ball. Like, you had to recognize that it went off of your hands. And seeing as you're going to be on a thin leash as a special teamer, you've got to try to hustle nonstop. You can't show these coaches that you're out here slacking like that. That's never a good look. And that would paint him in a really bad light here. That certainly would hurt the Steelers in the long run of this game. But they would get back on the field, have a bit of a slower drive, and respond with a field goal. By that point, though, it was too late. The Seahawks hit a little bit of a rhythm. And there was no stopping them at that point. I mean, A.J. Barner, for instance, was able to pick up this third down from 19 yards out. And then on the ensuing play, Sam Darnold dialed up a deep shot with a beautiful fucking throw and a monster catch by Jackson Smith and Jigba as he's being completely guarded by Jalen Ramsey. 43-yard gain on that play. Yeah, Jalen Ramsey's a good cornerback. It don't fucking matter. Jackson Smith and Jigba is an equally rising wide receiver in the NFL. Without a doubt. Now, they would have a positive play for themselves as Jack Sawyer would log what I think is his first NFL sack on Sam Darnold. Again, credit to the Ohio State man, but I'm like, no, you can't do that shit against my team. Either way, on third down, the Seahawks would call for a run play, attempting to be conservative about this, but the blocking was too damn good to where Kenneth Walker III was like, you know what, I'm going to sprint all the way in the end zone, untouched, for a 19-yard touchdown run. And I'm going to give us a 31-17 lead. To essentially end the game there, Steelers had a few more cracks at it, but Aaron Rodgers would be intercepted yet again by Kobe Bryant. And then they would just have a routine end-of-game drive following a punt by the Seahawks. So the Seahawks would bounce back with a 31-17 win. Absolutely immaculate game for them. Again, yes, Sam Darnold, when you look at the numbers, 295 passing yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 picks. Those picks were absolutely atrocious. Understandable. But the play that at least I was able to see in post and with what he was doing is definitely a solid step up. And if you can show that kind of progression on a week-to-week basis, you know you're doing something right. It also helped that, again, once they were able to establish the run, even though Kenneth Walker III was by far the most prolific runner with 105 rushing yards on 13 carries and a touchdown, it just makes them a force to be reckoned with if they can be consistent. As for the receiving attack, I mean, multiple people were getting fit. What can I say? But Jackson Smith and Jigba had 8 catches and 103 yards, while Cooper Kupp had 7 receptions for 90 yards. That is the kind of distribution between those two that you would be looking for optimally. I mean, both of them kind of operate in the same way if you want to label them as slot receivers. And again, even if Jackson Smith and Jigba is the one, both of them are incredibly smart football players when it comes to exploiting zones. So it makes that job for Darnold much, much easier when you can do that. No matter who is on the outside or where those two are lined up, you're going to have at least one of them to rely on a given play. It's just elite to have that wide receiver room. So glad that is the case. As for the Steelers, Rodgers definitely took a step back in this one as well. Again, with the athleticism of the Seahawks defense coming into play here, that was going to be a little bit of an advantage that they would have on him. And the fact that he was not only sacked 3 times in this game, but definitely pressured more, and also held at just 54.5% completion, 203 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. That's how inconsistent it can be on a week-to-week basis for an older Aaron Rodgers. It's not to say that he is a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but as he literally stated in his press conference, that is how things can go and how things can quickly change from time to time. And you gotta be able to roll with those punches on a season-long basis, or otherwise you will fall to the wayside as a ball club. As for their rushing attack, like I said, just 72 yards on 3.4 yards per carry. Nowhere near the brand of Steelers football that they'd be trying to implement. Receiving, though, was weird. It was very weird. I mean, the fact that Jaylen Warren and Jonnu Smith combined for the most catches in this ball game could be seen as a little bit underwhelming for this Steelers offense. Even though, again, you want to try to work the ball around to everyone. Yet Calvin Austin wasn't really that productive outside of 1 catch late in the game. And DK Metcalf, again, credit to the Seahawks coverage of him as well, but the fact that you had just 3 receptions for 20 yards in this game and a touchdown, like, that's definitely underwhelming for a game in which he might have been out trying to prove a point against this team. Now, he can't get himself the ball, but if receivers were consistently getting open for Aaron Rodgers, that probably would have helped him out immensely in those kinds of situations. Also worth noting, they mentioned that Roman Wilson, I don't even think that this is the case, but they did mention that he logged his first NFL catch. It's like, damn, he's been here for a long time. How the hell has he not had How the hell has he not had a catch yet? That's pretty crazy. I mean, he's gotten snaps for damn sure, but I guess they just haven't really been all that worried with giving him the ball. It's like, damn, that's kind of foul, to say the least. Nonetheless, Seahawks will be taking it to the Saints next week, and the Steelers are off to face against the Pats. That could be an interesting game. I could see them bouncing back in that one, but we won't know until they play those games. All right, man. Oh boy. Look, the fact that this game started off so slow was insane, because this Giants-Cowboys match actually turned out to be another Game of the Year candidate. I mean, you knew we were in for some kind of craziness when you saw that the Giants had 16 plays on the very first drive of the game and took off almost 9 minutes of game time driving down the field just to settle for a field goal. You had to imagine that something of some sort was going to be up in this funky game. But you probably didn't see anything like this coming. And if you did, I would tell you, you're probably lying. Real stuff. The Giants' defense actually held the Cowboys in check for a little bit, and before you knew it, with a few passes to get Malik Neighbors going of 28 and 15 yards down the field with Russell Wilson in prime fucking form, they would settle for a field goal to go up 6-0. Like, how the hell did they stumble upon this advantage against this Cowboys team? Like, it's crazy. I'm legitimately saying, man, if you lose this game, Cowboys fans, you're definitely going to be talking. You know, you're trying to stop the run, and you're trying to still have an elite pass rush, but Russell Wilson is just dominating you all over the field. Most of this game, that ain't the best of looks, kid. I'm not going to lie to you. And it didn't help that Cowboys didn't have any response at all. A no-yard catch from Ferguson, followed up by Brian Burns just getting in there with as much agility as possible to wreck Dak Prescott in the backfield and force them into a 3-and-out. The same thing would happen for the Cowboys defense. And I mean, hey, at least with a dime that Dak Prescott uncorked over to CeeDee Lamb, all of a sudden, they were in field goal range themselves. I mean, yes, even at the 38-yard line, because it's Brandon Aubrey that they have as their kicker. So anything is going to be within field goal range for him in that area. Like, as long as you get over midfield, you're good, bro. As long as you get over midfield, bro. I mean, damn. Insanity. Anyways, he would get the field goal here. And then the Giants would actually go on their first touchdown drive of the day. It helped that Wan'Dale Robinson is just a walk-in first down. I mean, he gets this 3rd and 3 by just finding a soft spot in his own and then working him in from the slot. Russell Wilson throws the perfect throw to him over the middle of the field and in the seams for a 25-yard gain before delivering his requisite moon ball, his patented moon ball, down the field to Malik Neighbors from 29 yards out for a touchdown. All of a sudden, they got a 10-point lead, getting into very crazy territory here, I'd imagine. And then the Cowboys would start to wake up a little bit. George Pickens would get a 12-yard catch here, and Jake Ferguson would also be found over the seam for 19 yards before they were able to just sneak in a very tight window throw off a slant route to Kevontae Turpin from 10 yards out for a touchdown, making this a 3-point ball game. And the half would end like that, essentially. The third quarter couldn't have started off much worse for both teams. I mean, yes, Drew Phillips of the Giants would work this pass from Dak Prescott after he initially missed a pass to Shoemaker on this drive, trying to do a similar thing. You're in Cowboys territory immediately, and if you're the Giants, you're thinking that, hey, if you can score a touchdown here, you give yourself the utmost momentum in this game. They do drive down the field. They get within the Cowboys' 10-yard line. But Cam Scatterboo dropped this pass, and it ends up being a failed possession, a failed chance at extending the lead for them. It cost them tremendously right after, within just 3 minutes. And with the help of a few penalties on Bobby Okereke and also Drew Phillips getting caught out of position trying to guard George Pickens. They would eventually give the ball to Javonte Williams. And again, when he's consistent, when he gets in that beast mode nature, he can be a running back that is impossible to bring down, as the Giants defense would find out on this 30-yard run that he would get in the end zone with to give the Cowboys a 17-13 lead. Both teams, with the help of Russell Wilson delivering a exceptional pass over to Darius Slayton, who also put in a tremendous effort extending the play on his own accord and getting 52 yards off this, would exchange field goals. But the Cowboys doing the same thing, yet again aided by penalties. But from here on out, the rest of this game was pretty much cracked out, to say the least. I mean, it definitely helped that Scatterboo would get in for his first NFL touchdown with a rushing touchdown after also just picking up a great 24-yard gain on the ground. Just a bowling ball. That is exactly what he plays like, and that's why they drafted him. So again, I would not be surprised, as I've stated in the past, if he were to eventually become the number one running back at some point. Because it's the talent, the skill set is just undeniable. Truthfully, the Cowboys wouldn't waste a lick of time. Now again, this did not help at all that the Giants gave up the most penalty yards in a game they played in since 2000. And it kept getting worse throughout the game. But through that, and also through just exceptional play from their star players, the Cowboys were able to consistently chip away at the lead here. I mean, CeeDee Lamb got, although the coverage was nice, the pass from Dak Prescott was immaculate. Hauled it in from 16 yards and then got another deep shot from 25 yards out to get the Cowboys into territory. They kept on driving down, getting a few small plays, and eventually Miles Sanders would punch it in for a 4-yard rushing touchdown. Weirdly enough, weird response, weird flex. How about this? Picture this situation. Russell Wilson in near clutch time, doing what he does best, and just throwing a laser of a pass over to Wan'Dale Robinson in the seam from the slot area yet again, this time for a 32-yard touchdown to take the lead in this game, giving the Giants the lead temporarily, literally within just a minute and 52 seconds, through just sheer passing and a few runs mixed in. The Cowboys would do the same thing. In fact, by the end of this game, some of these Dak Prescott completions were so impressive to the fact that they had a next-gen stats graphic appear stating that he tied his career high for the least likely completions. Because obviously they go on a percentage-based tally here. And about like 4 of them had extremely low percentages of completion. Yet he still completed them, including this touchdown pass right here to George Pickens. Damn near all the way to the left pylon of the end zone. Cornerback shading him as perfectly as one can in that position. And yet, Dak Prescott put it to only where George Pickens could go out and grab it. All of a sudden, it's 34-40. Well, 34-30, rather. 27 seconds pass. And the Giants have the lead yet again off of a play that absolutely had me hyped up. You want to see Russell Wilson? you will have to go and watch that play again, honestly. I mean, bruh, not only do you get the 15-yard scramble beforehand, but with no timeouts on a drive that you absolutely had to get a touchdown on, he uncorks a fucking 48-yard pass down the field with Malik Neighbors in pretty much double coverage at this point. And yet, it was such a beautiful pass to where Neighbors could go leap out and grab it through all of that congestion and get the fucking touchdown right fucking back. And yet, I'm supposed to believe that Russ was washed. Okay, as they take a 37-34 lead here. At that point, you're thinking that the game is done. It is not. It is far from over. Because when you mean to tell me that, again, all they had to do was get past midfield and they get to the Giants' 46-yard line, the Cowboys do. Tell me why this man, Brandon Aubrey, hits a 64-yard field goal to tie the game. And Schottenheimer was also quoted as saying if they needed to go for it from like 70, they probably would have done the same thing. It could have been good from 70. Had that much power and distance. And as a result, the game would go into overtime. Now, again, the rule change states that both teams, no matter if there's a touchdown scored on the first possession, will at least get a chance to touch the ball and try to make something happen. So it just added even more intrigue to this game. They would be very fortunate, the Giants, to get a stop, as Dak Prescott would also fumble on this drive, luckily get it back, and they would be forced to punt. Now, the Giants had a weird situation unfold as well. I mean, it was looking well on this specific drive. They got Neighbors in a rhythm immediately, and then all of a sudden, you had a backwards lateral turn into a fumble that ended up being pivotal on this drive. Lost 14 yards, killed all momentum here, and they had to punt. Now, the Cowboys would be in a similar spot, but now you're just playing for the field goal at this point. As long as you get a score, you win. Yet, a lot of just self-inflicted things would hurt them. I mean, it didn't help that George Pickens was able to pick up, or nearly pick up this first down, but was called for offensive pass interference. They got a lot of those yards back on this ensuing Javonte Williams run. But on third down, because if you're the Giants, you have to understand that you need to keep everything short. You can't let them get anywhere near midfield, because if they do it, they're going to try to game it with Brandon Aubrey. You know this at this point. Drew Phillips makes an exceptional form tackle on Jalen Tolbert. Hangs on for his dear life trying to make the play, and he did that. And they punt. Then the unexplainable happened. Because I don't know, for one, on this first down, why Devin Singletary got the ball in this case. But also, Russell Wilson would throw an unexplainable interception to Donovan Wilson that just completely hurt to see. It's like he had been playing so well. He'd been playing so damn well. And yet, you try to get it up to Malik Neighbors again. I get it. He'd been balling in this game. But he was all the way on the left sideline. And Donovan Wilson was essentially playing center field at that point. That is just not a pass you could afford to miss, and it ended up being so brutal for them. Cowboys at that point decided to stop fucking around. George Pickens would actually make a good 27-yard gain down the field, and then Dak Prescott on second down would manage to break loose for a 14-yard run. At that point, with just 4 seconds to go, it was Brandon Aubrey's time. And 46 is light work for him. He made it. The Cowboys would win it in overtime, 40-37. Now, what I will say for this, before I even get into the numbers, Russ, you would just hope it's consistent from Russ. But man, even if it is for a game, man, to show all these fucking haters out here what is truly up with him was definitely a spectacular game to watch from him. So I'm not taking that away at all. But at the same time, you know it's bad for the Cowboys when literally just a few hours after this game happens to get into one of the developments early. They would sign Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year contract. The fact that, yeah, on some occasions, he was able to feel pressure. But you get to Russell Wilson just 2 times, and you allow him to torch your defensive unit like that. That is unacceptable. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is not going to be a great season for the Cowboys if you continue to get in situations like this. Even if you can trust Brandon Aubrey, your defense has got to do a way better job of accounting for different weapons like this. There is no reason that something like this should ever happen again, truly. It is just not a great look for them at all. Get into the Cowboys' numbers. Dak Prescott completed 73.1% of his passes for 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, while Javonte Williams had 97 rushing yards on 18 carries and a touchdown of his own. As for the receivers, CeeDee Lamb had 9 receptions for 112 yards, while Jake Ferguson had 9 receptions for 78 yards. George Pickens had 68 receiving yards and a touchdown on 5 receptions, and Devontae Turpin had 47 receiving yards and a touchdown on 4 receptions. Javonte Williams also added 33 receiving yards out of the backfield. As for the Giants, Russell Wilson, 73.2% completion percentage for a career high. Yes, you heard that right. Career high. Even if y'all might believe, again, that he's fucking washed and that all his prime years are behind him. Career high, 450 passing yards and 3 touchdowns with an interception. Now, the rushing attack was not all there, though, again, Scotty Boo was the most efficient runner at 4.1 yards per clip on 45 yards and a touchdown. Receivers were just killer, especially when you look at Malik Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson. And again, you can question that, hey, Malik Nabers for a time might have been the only legitimate wide receiver on this team, but at the same time, Wan'Dale Robinson has always been a consistent compliment, yet to see him go off for a game like this, 8 receptions and 142 yards with a touchdown in there. Man, that is a fucking impressive day for him. Also, Malik Nabers, it definitely sucks to suffer this loss as a team, but he ate, 9 receptions for 167 yards in those 2 touchdowns. Now, I don't know if every week can be like that, but man, as long as you are trying to get Nabers the ball in this way, if you can continue to work him in ball games like this, the Giants will definitely be a competent enough team to hang in games like this. And that's exactly what happened. But again, brutal turnover at the wrong time cost them. That has to suck. Still, it was a great game to watch as a neutral fan, and for something that wasn't even anticipated to really be all that good. People were expecting the Cowboys to flat out win this, in fact. No, they had to work for it all game long. And it ended up being a truly great one to start out this short season. Like, we already got 3 fucking Game of the Year candidates, essentially, in just the first 2 weeks and some change. Like, that is an insane clip, to say the least. Moving on to the Ravens and the Browns. Okay. Well, this one, although it would start off slow, and granted, there was promise for the Browns defense right here. There were things to be happy with in this game. But, yeah, a lot of it just went completely south as the second half went underway. Like, for instance, the Browns offense to start things out, man, they kept on involving Harold Fannin Jr. And for my first time watching him in the NFL, I did not know that he was wearing the number 44. Real interesting shit. I genuinely did not know that. So it was crazy to watch. Nonetheless, the first quarter was mostly a slow one as you just saw a punt after punt. But the Ravens, with a short field, would be forced to settle for a field goal from Tyler Loop from 43 yards out. The Browns would go 3-and-out yet again, and then it got chaotic. Because while the Browns defense was still very much a threat, I mean, Myles Garrett obviously has a full grave of quarterbacks in his backyard, as you know, and he would continue to terrorize Lamar Jackson early and often in this game. They would be forced to go 3-and-out. And the Browns had a little bit of progress. They would give the split backs in Judkins and Sampson a few reps before Joe Flacco attempted a couple passes, yet with great pressure from that Ravens defense, they forced incompletions on both occasions. And they were able to get very, very fucked over. The next play, as they're going for this punt, they literally have a special teamer in Hummel come in there and completely rock Corey Bojorquez while deflecting the ball. So yeah, shorter field for the Ravens following that block punt. And then they still almost fucked this drive up. And this wasn't Derrick Henry's fault. Oh man, so many Ravens fans were anxious about Derrick Henry just holding on to the ball after what happened in the last game. He would fumble the ball in this possession, but you gotta understand what exactly happened on this play. Now, from me watching this live, what happened, right, was that he was obviously getting tackled by Mitchell. Well, not even getting tackled by him. Hickman was tackling him a little bit lower on the play, and you're just trying to force him down to the ground at this point. You don't want Derrick Henry getting a full head of steam and running the hell over you. You don't. Definitely a crazy decision to tackle him low, but he tried to trip him up at his feet. And as Derrick Henry is falling down to the ground on this Hickman tackle attempt, Mitchell comes in, one of their corners, and punches the ball out pretty damn well. Set him up perfectly. So this wasn't a Derrick Henry issue. They played spectacular defense in that little sequence right there. But fortunately for them, they were able to get the ball back, and on the next play, Tylan Wallace was able to break open on a crossing route from 15 yards out for a touchdown. Now, while you would have Jerry Jeudy pick up a 26-yard gain on this next drive, it would still not prove to be enough for this Browns defense, and they would punt yet again. Things ended up being mostly the same way for the rest of the first half, as, again, very, very defensive. Between the likes of Myles Garrett showing his prowess, and also the combination of the Ravens pass rush along with their secondary in Starks and Hamilton just being exceptional forces in their respective positions, they were literally in a stalemate. They couldn't do much. But the Browns would be fortunate enough to break through for a field goal from this kicker that I'm still not familiar with. And they would go into the half down 10-3. The second half was very much garbage time material. Even though Joe Flacco would reach a milestone in this game, that did not end up mattering to them. They didn't give a fuck. They kept pressuring the hell out of him. And they were certainly able to completely rattle even him as the established veteran that he is. Also, too, cornerbacks just started getting exposed. I don't know what it is with the efficiency rate of DeAndre Hopkins' receptions in this season, but my goodness, man, he is... Oh, boy, he is just taking names out here, man. You had Greg Newsome II guarding this man, and Lamar Jackson launches it deep, and he mosses the shit out of him for what would have originally been a touchdown, if not for it being overturned and him being marked just a yard short, which was weird. He got in the end zone at that point, so I didn't necessarily understand it. But either way, first and goal, you're thinking, hey, you can just give this right over to Derrick Henry and you're good. Derrick Henry, unfortunately, had been struggling in this game. They held him in check. And that was a massive win for the Browns. Truly. He did not do anything in this game after turning into a literal monster in week 1. He did virtually nothing. And it still worked completely against the Browns because they couldn't stop anyone else. But they would, at least on this drive, force Baltimore back after Myles Garrett's sack. The fact that you get first and goal from the 1 and proceed to lose 13 yards is pretty wild. Yet they would get the field goal anyways. But, yeah, Joe Flacco would just be haunted by Nate Wiggins. I mean, not only would he force an incompletion on him on the second down play, but he would also lurk him completely on this third down. And he nearly got the touchdown, if not for Joel Bitonio managing to tackle him. Now again, Nate Wiggins on that original play, that earlier play, actually thumped the hell out of Jerry Jeudy. I'm not going to lie to you. He's not known for that. And they mentioned that, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, you're definitely a speed guy and you can't get past Joel fucking Bitonio. That's a little wild. Anyways, though it would take a little bit of extra effort, the Ravens would punch it in from 2 yards out with Vontaze Walker. And then the Browns would respond with Harold Fannin getting involved and also with Cedric Tillman on 4th and long after very weird sequences indeed. Because they tried to roll or go for a targeting call after Joe Flacco was tackled off of a scramble that he would rarely be getting. That was really weird. Anyways, Tillman would get an 18-yard touchdown catch to make this a 20-10 ball game. Don't let the score deceive you, and also don't be out here thinking that that touchdown even made things enticing for this game. No. The Ravens proceeded to score 21 points in this fourth quarter. 21. Vontaze Walker would get another beautiful pass from Lamar Jackson for another touchdown. And then you would have Roquan Smith punch the fumble out and get a scoop 6 to make this a 34-10 ball game. The Browns would then turn the ball over on downs again with Nate Wiggins again trying to show a little physicality, getting in there and thumping the hell out of Jerome Ford Jr. on this catch, sending him back at least a yard. they would just add even more icing on the cake and more salt to the Browns' wounds here. Because if he didn't get it the first time, fine. They just decided to go back to DeAndre Hopkins anyways, and he would still moss the corner for a 23-yard touchdown. Not only that, but with his catches in this game, DeAndre Hopkins would also reach the milestone of 13,000 receiving yards. Impressive day for him. Again, that's the crazy thing about them having DeAndre Hopkins here. You know, you have people going out and saying that, hey, he can be their pseudo wide receiver 1 on these plays. The thing is, they aren't consistently calling his number all the time. They just don't feel the need to. Yet, whenever, in just the first 2 games of this season, whenever they have called his number, he's been more than ready to make the fucking play, and he has. Fucking wild. Now, although this is garbage time, there would be a really interesting situation. Dillon Gabriel would come in and lead them on a pretty solid touchdown drive. Now, again, you're not really going up against their strongest defense at this point, but still, you know, I guess the Browns are trying to come away with something. And hey, you know, even though Quinshon Judkins would get the drive going tremendously with a 31-yard run of his own, there is beauty in that Dylan Sampson, a player who was actually celebrating his 21st birthday on the day of the game, actually was able to score a touchdown. I'm hearing that. He is by far the youngest player in the NFL as well, at exactly 21 years old at the time. And I'm like, damn, all right, you know, yeah, you're slaughtering them, but you know what? If you're the Browns, you got to do everything in your power to get Dylan Sampson a touchdown here. You know, even if it is late, even if it is garbage time, even if it isn't really going to make a difference on the overall game, that's something special. You got to try to do it. They ended up making it happen, so that's respect. But that's probably the only bit of silver lining here. And again, the aforementioned fact that Derrick Henry was held in absolute fucking check in a game that the Ravens would still win 41-17. In fact, I think with this game right here, because Lamar Jackson wasn't running the ball all that much either. But think about this. Think about this for a Ravens stat line. Just think about this for a second. 21 combined rushes for 45 combined yards. It definitely ended their games-long streak of consecutive ones with at least 100 yards as a team. And this was certainly an absolutely abnormal game for their rushing attack. You probably never again see them rush for so little in a ball game ever again. And the Browns still got smoked by 24. Lamar Jackson in this game, though, completed 65.5% of his passes for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. Zay Flowers would have 7 receptions for 75 yards. DeAndre Hopkins would have 2 catches for 2 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. And Devontae Walker would have 2 receptions and 26 yards with 2 touchdowns. As for the Browns, oh man, 55.6% completion for Joe Flacco and 199 passing yards with a touchdown and an interception. At least Quinshon Judkins had 61 rushing yards though. Man. So yeah, a dominant win by the Ravens here. But hey, don't just take my word for it.
Baltimore Ravens, they're coming from a blown lead against the Bills, losing 41-40. And they're now playing the Browns, the Cleveland Browns. They recently beat them 41-17. It seems like they had learned from last week in terms of like blowing leads, protecting the lead even when it's like, almost the end of the game, but like not like actually the end of the game and they're up like 2-3 scores. Like everybody knows like what the Ravens are capable of, but it's just a matter of protecting that lead, like no matter what, right? So Lamar, he had a really good game. Derrick Henry, he didn't really have like too much of a good game himself. The Browns just wanted to game plan like against them. They wanted to challenge, the Ravens passing game, and obviously that didn't work well. And that speaks to how dynamic this offense really is, because if you try to stop Derrick Henry, okay, cool, but then we can throw it like all across your defense. And if you try to defend against the pass, like we're just gonna get like 200 rushing yards. Like there's multiple ways that this team can beat you, and it's very scary. So the Ravens had to continue to play like this in fourth quarter scenarios where you're up by like 10 or more, because of course like when you're only up by like one possession or down by one possession, you're going to be a little bit more intense with how you play your offense. But without a way of saying, oh yeah, I'm done with the game, after having that good amount of lead, and then just out of nowhere they're just scoring like 20 unanswered points on you to win the game. That's just something that cannot keep happening. I would also say that prior to the game, there was a lot more topic, like I would say talk show topics revolved around John Harbaugh. He doesn't really get spoken about in a negative manner, but now people are realizing the impact he's having as a head coach on these type of leagues. This has been happening even before Lamar Jackson became the quarterback. And it's like that Bills game, Lamar did nothing wrong. So that's just telling you all you need to know about, how this team could be sabotaging Lamar's chances individually of having that award, having that Super Bowl award, having the MVP, all that type of stuff. But if you're a Ravens fan, I know I'm personally a Ravens fan, but if you're a Ravens fan, I wouldn't be too excited after this game. This is a team that we're supposed to beat. We do have a Super Bowl contender roster, and I expect like things like this to continue to happen. But it's really the teams like the Chiefs, the Bills, the elite NFC teams that we have to worry about, because those are the teams that are going to be playing us again throughout the season, and we have to make sure that we don't put ourselves in this position with the I wouldn't say it's a hard schedule, but I would say that it's certainly difficult schedule for the Ravens. I mean, they've been able to handle it. Like they've been able to consistently have 12-win seasons, so it wouldn't seem like too much of a problem. But just generally that's going to hurt you if you don't learn from that. And there's been times in which especially in 2022 when you have games like the Bills game, and then you do well for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then you play some other good team, and then you just revert back to your old ways, or you go into the playoffs and do the exact same things. That's why I wouldn't be so excited as a Ravens fan after this game, because they always show their true colors when it matters the most. But just have to make sure that Lamar, he's not making the mistakes. He's making sure that every single year he improves and he doesn't make those mistakes. But the team has to make sure that they're contributing. They're turning the ball over. They're able to get rack yards, off of Lamar's throws, and just consistently defending players every single possession. So that's really it. That was a good one for the Ravens.
Moving on to I guess, a little bit of bonus coverage action between the Jags and the Bengals. Yeah, this one, oh boy, this is kind of a doozy. All right, I don't know what it is consistently with Trevor Lawrence and just playing so passive. I guess the team as a whole made a few mistakes in this game, clearly. But the fact that they were engaged in a situation like this, where the Bengals had a chance to win this game after being down by just 3 points at the exact time that they cut it back on. Because to this point, a lot of context, too much context happened. For one, as it would later be fully detailed, Joe Burrow would go out early in the ball game, and in came Jake Browning. He threw 3 interceptions in this ball game, and yet managed to still, with touchdown passes to T. Higgins in a monster game by Ja'Marr Chase, still had this team right in the mix of victory right here. They get down, they're driving late in this game, and Jake Browning, with them already being inside the 5-yard line at this specific point in the game, he leaps over the pile and gets in for a touchdown that would eventually seal up the game. I mean, it also didn't help that Trey Hendrickson, on the very first play of their next possession, would get the sack. And they didn't even really have all that much time to make any play of any kind afterwards, giving the Bengals a 31-27 victory. Yet, okay, I'll just get into the numbers. Reverse the Jaguars and then the Bengals here. That makes sense. And then I'll further elaborate on what I'm talking about with Joe Burrow. But as for Trevor Lawrence, I mean, what the fuck? 57.1% completion. 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, bro. Crazy. Crazy work, man. The rushing attack for the Jags still seems to be really good, though. 139 more rushing yards for them as a unit and 5.1 yards per carry. Makes you wonder if they should have started taking a lot more opportunities to just simply run the ball, rather than trying to rely so heavily on Trevor Lawrence, because at least in this situation, he didn't really prove them well. As for their receivers, the struggles from Brian Thomas Jr. have been well stated at this point by many people. I mean, he was dropping way too many passes in this ball game. Also, it didn't help that De'Ami Brown was missed, although he still had 5 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown in this game. And Parker Washington also had 5 receptions and 76 yards of his own. As for the Bengals, Browning in for Burrow. 2 touchdown passes, a rushing touchdown, and 3 interceptions, as I mentioned. Shit's insane. But again, when you have this wide receiving core, no matter what quarterback you might be, anything is really possible. I mean, T. Higgins obviously had 3 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown. But how about Ja'Marr Chase? After the slow start he had last week, for him to come out and get 14 receptions for 165 yards and a touchdown is exceptional. And yet again, yards per carry is elite, but his longest catch was only from 25 yards out. So they were literally just placing him all over the field, trying to exploit the mismatches. And they did a great job of doing that. If you can give Ja'Marr Chase that kind of opportunity on a consistent basis. They still have no rushing attack, though. They don't. 48 rushing yards on 2.8 yards per carry between those two is just atrocious still. But on to Joe Burrow. Bengals fans might be in a little bit of a panic mode because he would be ruled out with a grade 3 turf toe injury, not only from this game, but now for the next 3 months of NFL action. What? That's just gotta be some kind of crazy if you are a Bengals fan. Because the way I would envision that they're thinking about this is that, damn, this season that we finally start getting off on the right foot in the Zach Taylor era, we have our starting quarterback go down with a long injury. Not something that's minor, but something that is going to take a massive amount of time to recover from. He's going to need surgery for it, and it's going to take him out of commission. Y'all may be feeling like all momentum has just been wiped out just like that, and I can't blame you. I can't blame you. I would have my questions about it too, because the biggest one is this. Yes, Jake Browning in 2023, when he stepped in for Joe Burrow, did also, incidentally enough, beat the Jaguars in one of those games and managed to get the Bengals in playoff contention in Joe Burrow's absence. But that was for a much shorter amount of time. We are asking Jake Browning to harness that kind of magic and that kind of leadership for at least the next 3 months. That is a tall task, especially for a backup in this situation. And it's not something that the Bengals are taking lightly either. As a matter of fact, again, just get into some of the other developments that have taken place here. They not only elevated Brett Rippon off the practice squad, but they have signed Sean Clifford and Mike White as additional backups as insurance to try to weather this horrible, horrible storm that just came out of absolutely nowhere. It is absolutely tough. Like, I don't know. Like, there is optimism to be had in that. Again, you've already won 2 at this point. And also, biggest thing, it still could be worse. This is not set to be a season ender. Oh, if this was season ending, oh my goodness. Oh yeah, it would probably be done. But again, chances are, in a perfect world, you get Joe Burrow back and the team is at least within playoff contention. So the burden on him is alleviated just a little bit and enough for him to go out and lead you to wins and victories for the rest of the season. That's how I would expect it to be in a perfect world. Like, if you can get at least, I would say, 7 wins with Jake Browning in the lineup over the next 3 months, you're probably in a good position to make something happen. And then from there, Joe Burrow is good to do whatever he needs to do for the team from there. But you got to win at least 7 games. If they can't do that, and you have to have Joe Burrow essentially do what he did last season, even though he was mostly healthy, in terms of trying to battle back just to make the wild card and trying to clinch a berth that way, it will not end with the optimal result. They would quite literally miss out on the playoffs, again, if you have to settle for that. So you've got to try to help Joe Burrow out just as much in this situation as a ball club. And I think that on the whole, they understand that. They understand that they got to sustain some capability of winning a high percentage of their ball games over this time. Or otherwise, they're booked. All right. To move on to Eagles-Chiefs. And granted, came into this one very, 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 very late. because they still had the Cowboys and Giants game running. And granted, they had to. They couldn't get away from that game, man. It is an overtime battle between those two teams. You had to show the extended coverage. I get it, 100%. But by the time the game would get back on, the Eagles would start driving down the field with Devontae Smith getting a 13-yard catch. Honestly, the way that the offense decided to play in this game, that was probably one of the more at least early on, it was looking like that would be one of his better catches of the day. And then Saquon Barkley would do Saquon Barkley things, getting in untouched from 13 yards out for a touchdown. Things still look a little rough for this Chiefs offense right now. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they were able to hit Travis Kelce up on this possession. And yeah, they were also able to have Patrick Mahomes get out for a fucking 22-yard run. But the fact that, again, obviously Josh Simmons is going to have a little bit of a struggle as a left tackle here. The fact that they still don't have a run game right now. And the fact that he is consistently getting pressure. Like the fact that Andrew Mukuba Sr. on multiple occasions, including this play right here, could get in the backfield and force pressure on Patrick Mahomes and combine for a half sack with Za'Darius Smith is a problem. But the Chiefs would still get on the board because Butker is a great enough kicker in his own regard. They would force the Chiefs defense, they would force the Eagles to go 3 and out. And they kept that offense relatively passive. I legitimately am not kidding you when I say that they couldn't throw the ball down the field. Even if it's an identity thing, even if on most games they refuse to do it, because obviously they're going to grind you out with their rushing attack. There were times in which Jalen Hurts was trying to dial up the deep ball, and he just could not get it. So as a result, the Eagles would punt by a 4th down conversion from Travis Kelce for 18 yards. Mahomes would just consistently get at it on the ground. And again, he can do it. I promise you, he can do it. Like this 3rd down sees a play breakdown. And of course, when that happens, every single time that happens, you have to watch out for Patrick Mahomes in the rushing game. And he made Andrew Mukuba Sr. pay for trying to tackle him. The very next play would see him get in for a 13-yard rushing touchdown as well. I get that. But you want this kind of contribution from your running backs. And the fact that you're relying on just a few solid runs from Kareem Hunt to pass for a legitimate run game is not a great sign. Also, when understanding that they still have not been able to establish much of the deep ball, although they have been trying to get back to that flow of their offense. Jalen Hurts would get on some of the same timing on this next drive, rushing for his own 11-yard gain and just chipping away with passing yardage. Again, nothing explosive, keeping everything short, but picking up timely first downs when they needed to. The Eagles would then kick a field goal with Jake Elliott from 58 yards out to take it into half with a tied score. I didn't understand this conversion attempt right here to open up the half for the Chiefs. And that is a little concerning to me. You know, again, Andy Reid, obviously unquestioned, a great coach. Okay, no doubt about it. But why did he feel the need to go for a 4th and 1 in his own territory? And not only just the decision to do that, but the play call that he deployed here was just not a very smart one. I mean, you had Kareem Hunt run it to the outside. And not only did he fumble, but Nolan Smith Jr. was able to just get right in there for the tackle and blow the play up completely. It wasn't really a great call at all. And as a result, although, again, the Chiefs' defense largely prevented Philly from going anywhere with the ball, they were still in great enough position to go for a field goal. Like, you're just giving the lead away like that. I didn't understand. And again, this has been a stalemate for the most part. A lot of these next few drives were just so very, very slow. Okay? There's no question about it. But the Chiefs were at least looking to do something. Okay? They were driving on this possession, I'm not going to lie to you. Travis Kelce hauled in a nice 23-yard catch on Cooper DeJean. And he would also, Mahomes that is, get it to Tyquan Thornton to get closer to picking up a first down before Kareem Hunt on a different fourth down would actually get the right play call this time in a similar formation to their original fourth down attempt with him. They managed to work out well. And at that moment, you're in goal-to-goal position. You have a tremendous chance to make something happen. And Mahomes honestly puts the pass on this slant route to Travis Kelce in as perfect of a position as he could. Travis Kelce drops it inexplicably right into the hands of Andrew Mukuba Sr., the aforementioned rookie who had been pressuring Patrick Mahomes all night long, now managed to get a pick on him again, although it was mainly on Travis Kelce here. We know this. He's running hauling ass on the sideline, trying his best to score. But the Ohio State man in Josh Simmons, for him to be a rookie and a big offensive lineman, was not having it. He hawked his ass down. And that, honestly, in that moment, I'm thinking, hey, even though that is a rough fortune for the Chiefs to deal with, if the defense continues to hold in the way in which they had been doing all game long, that would have been a touchdown-saving tackle. And in theory, at least for a while, you could argue that that was the case. But all it would take is for the only explosive passing play of the day being given up by Trent McDuffie after he actually made a good deflection on this pass attempt to A.J. Brown on the play before, gave up a 28-yard moss to Devontae Smith in the red zone. And at that point, I'm like, no. That essentially capped it off right there. This was not going to be a drive that ended well for the Chiefs, regardless. They got close enough to the 1-yard line, and you know that the tush push was coming. You knew it. It took them 2 plays. I mean, the Chiefs were able to stop the first time. But the second time, no. Hurts would get in with the signature touchdown. He also extends his streak of consecutive games with a rushing touchdown and has kind of moved up the leaderboards, I think, in terms of overall rushing touchdowns in NFL history for a quarterback. If not, he's certainly close enough to doing it. Mahomes would go on another 3-0. And the Chiefs would then force a stop on the Eagles here. But this would be a drive of desperation. And, I mean, they did kind of answer the call, although it was too little too late. I mean, how many times have we seen them in just the first couple weeks trying to get the deep shots to Tyquan Thornton to spread the ball around, to stretch the defense, and open up a lot of these shorter passes to become even bigger plays than they intend to be. And misfire. after misfire after misfire after misfire. However, following a pickup by Nico Migio, who is rarely utilized as a wide receiver, more of a return specialist here. And also, Jawan Taylor, again, with another fucking penalty. All right? He would actually deliver the deep shot to Tyquan Thornton. And it was the perfect combination of things. You know, Mahomes had enough time to just stand there, wind up, fire the pass down the field, and Tyquan Thornton high-pointed the ball perfectly from 49 yards out to give them a touchdown and at least decrease the lead to 3 points. But again, onside kicks are just nearly impossible to recover, and they wouldn't do it. From that, it took a couple more tush pushes, but the Eagles would cap off the game with a 20-17 victory. Crazy to say that the game of the week, the true game of the week and game of the year candidate, would come on before the actual game of the week in this match, and it ended up being far better, but this was still competitive. Yet again, man, oh boy, for the Eagles, again, anytime you can go out in this day and age, okay, and win a game in which your quarterback only throws for 101 yards is absolutely fucking nuts. I think that is a career low for him, and it's definitely a low when it comes to quarterbacks who have won games across NFL history. And I think, at least in the modern era, this is the lowest amount of passing yards a winning quarterback has had in a game. Even on a day where it was slow for this offense, the fact that you win a game that way is absolutely insane. It shouldn't always have to be like that. As for the running backs, 122 combined yards. Saquon Barkley accounted for 88 of those and had a touchdown, while Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's just grinding out the ball games. That is fucking crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh man. And again, people have certainly been talking their shit, man. They are not happy about this. Chris Jones was calling out Jalen Hurts as they were trying to wind down the clock, talking about, you only have 100 passing yards. In like an angry fucking way. It's hard not to be salty in that situation. I can't lie to you, man. It's hard not to. But they still got the job done. All right. As for Mahomes, man, he had 243 combined yards and 2 total touchdowns. Again, the aforementioned interception, but I'm not gonna put that on him. Still, they gotta figure it out. I mean, they should be able to tune it up against the Giants next week, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. They're still just going on all these long, drawn-out drives. And yet, they're looking. They're not going to stop looking for the deep shots. But the accuracy has got to start shifting into a better direction if they want to add that layer of their offense back to their arsenal. Because it's not going to be taken seriously if you're constantly missing, and then the one time you get a deep shot to Tyquan Thornton is too little too late. Travis Kelce had 61 receiving yards and 4 catches in this game. But again, that drop is a brutal one. Tyquan Thornton had 59 yards and a touchdown. And Hollywood Brown had 5 receptions for 30 yards. He would also have a situation where he was sidelined for a little bit. And he would come back. Yeah, they don't need any more wide receiver injuries right now. Just, you know what I'm saying? Relating to that, Xavier Worthy is currently questionable for next week as well. Just to work that in there right now. But, man, Man, oh man, oh man. All right, moving on to Falcons and Vikings for Sunday Night Football. This game was promoted as an absolute battle between Penix Jr. and McCarthy. Obviously, the last time they faced off against each other was their matchup in college at Washington and respectively. This game ended up being anything but that. Watching this entire thing live, even though it was promoted as a primetime game, the only touchdown did not come up until around 3 minutes and some change in the fourth quarter. And I mean, this turned out into a combination of a defensive slugfest and just an amalgamation of self-inflicted wounds by both teams. Not going to question that at all. Like, for the Falcons, let's talk about them here. Man, multiple drives looked so well for them. I mean, the fact that on the very first drive, because coming into the game, even though Bijan Robinson did struggle in the rushing attack last week, he also added 100 receiving yards. And it was to the point that in 19 of the 35 games that he has appeared in prior to Sunday Night Football, he had at least 100 scrimmage yards, which has been the most in the NFL since 2023. Already emerging as one of the best running backs in the league. We know that. He comes right out of the fucking gates, getting runs of 25 and 17 yards. And yet, for whatever reason, when they get into the red zone, although granted this is third down and long, maybe not in this specific situation, but repeatedly, when they got into situations like that, with him having good runs to start out drives, and then getting into third and manageable situations in the red zone, for whatever reason, although Michael Penix Jr. was at least okay in passing in this game, he missed a lot in this area. And while you can also credit the Vikings defense for being able to force those wide receivers into ungovernable situations to where they didn't have any recognition of where the ball was going, at the same time, that was something that could have been avoided if you simply just gave Bijan Robinson the ball. He's going for more than 5 yards a pop at this point. You could give him the ball on 3rd and 5 and live to see another play here. That shit would really hit the fan. They'd be up 6-0. But on a drive where you probably could have enacted even more momentum in this game, you have Drake London being stupid with a football. Because as he's doing all this dancing around, he's trying to stave off longtime Viking Eric Wilson, who would actually return to the team this season. And he kind of fucking gets it at an angle, gets his hand right in there to jam the ball out of Drake London's mitts. And Theo Jackson recovers it. They get the ball back. All I can say is that for as many times as you wanted to get in your own way by refusing to give Bijan Robinson the ball, at the same time, man, that Falcons defense was exceptional. The combo of James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker, the two rookies, along with a lot of different defenders on that front seven, whether we're looking at Zach Harrison as well, and even David Onyemata, they made life a living nightmare for J.J. McCarthy out there in that game. He was not at any moment comfortable. And I mean, Bears did a similar thing to start off the game last week, and then he settled in as the second half, and especially the fourth quarter came along. There were no signs of that happening. even on the occasional play where J.J. McCarthy was able to break out and make something happen, in comes Josh Metellus. In comes one of their linebackers, like Divine Diablo. They kept talking about him all night because of the way he had been flying over to the ball. And granted, he was. You know, for a person who had been struggling to do well in Las Vegas, he honestly had a solid game in his own right. Like, he was making ball carriers pay for even running in his direction. And he was not letting much get past him in coverage either. By the way, the coverage unit, oh my goodness. Outside of one blown up play where you have Justin Jefferson matched up on Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame, he absolutely toasted him. But that is Justin Jefferson going up against a rookie. What do you expect? He and also rookie Billy Bowman Jr. played lights out fucking football in this game as well. And the fact that you're pairing that up with them both having Jesse Bates III to learn from as a safety is fucking mind-boggling. And it paid dividends for them. They were only able to run the ball just a little bit. Nothing too crazy. And when it came to passes, like everything was rushed for the Vikings. And that is exactly what you can do when the Falcons have pass rushes in their arsenal. For a team that for 5 years been the worst performing unit in terms of sacks and pressures. The fact that they convert these plays now will truly make them elite once again if they, again, continue to build off this, keep it consistent. You know, it's going to be a week-to-week trial here. You're not going to all have it down in like less than a full season of work. It's going to take time for sure. This shows tremendous promise, truthfully. As for the Vikings, it's really bad for J.J. McCarthy right now. Because those interceptions that he was baited into, one from Watts and one from Bowman Jr. each, making their first interceptions in their NFL career, were just exceptionally terrible reads. Like I said, everything when it came to his clock was rushed, and he also just took tremendous amount of hits that he should not be taking. Now, granted, you could put that on the offensive line, but at the same time, there's a balance of it. If you're holding on to the ball too long, and you have that athletic pass rushing unit coming after you, they're going to make you fucking pay for it more often than not. And it got to the point where he got so banged up that he, on top of also fumbling with Zach Harrison forcing that one, and also ending this game without scoring a single touchdown. Although there was promise on a different breakdown play where Justin Jefferson broke completely free and managed to pick up a 50-yard gain to get them within a 3-point ball game. He is also now set to miss the next few weeks due to injury. And as a result, the Vikings, would sign... Well, no, they have Carson Wentz already, so he's going to be starting. But Aaron Jones Sr. would also go down with injury as well. And again, the way they were trying to balance it out was interesting. Like, again, I get that Jordan Mason, and granted, there were still a few runs here where I'm like, okay, Jordan Mason is just an absolute yak monster. Even if he is not a player who is considered a household name, he's definitely a running back that you would like to have as a complimentary piece. That left Aaron Jones Sr. in an interesting predicament because, again, he'd still been contributing well to this point in both phases of the running back position, at least when it comes to receiving and rushing the football. They got so over-reliant on Jordan Mason that even with Aaron Jones Sr. being more efficient, you just completely phased the man out of the game. And yet that still didn't work out for you. But now with Aaron Jones Sr. being out, they also decided to give Cam Akers another shot. Like, why? Why? They just cut this man. And, like, man, the cycle continues, bro. The cycle fucking continues. I mean, my brother. Why the fuck is this Cameron Akers is like second or third stint with this team at this point? This is a very interesting relationship, to say the least. I don't know what more to say about it. It's so weird. But yeah, that's a way to talk about this game. I mean, the numbers won't do it justice. Again, like Michael Penix Jr., 135 yards, 61.9% completion. He was okay, but those misses and those critical situations hurt. And it is in those moments, at least most of them, where on third and manageable, you would like to get ball to Bijan Robinson. I mean, I shit you not, dude. He had his 20th career game with 100+ yards from scrimmage. And not only that, he had 25 total touches for 168 total yards in this game. Yet, in 3rd and 5 and shorter situations, this guy would not get the ball. But as a whole, the Falcons' rushing attack is really, really fucking good. And you know it's always a good sign when you can have Tyler Allgeier sub in to take some of the burden off of Robinson balling at this point. And he still had a productive night of his own. 76 rushing yards and a touchdown. In fact, interesting stat line for Allgeier. They mentioned that he has the second longest active streak of touches without a fumble to open his career. The person leading that would be Joe Mixon to open his career with over 900 touches. So yeah, I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you that Tyler Allgeier will even get remotely close to breaking that. I just found that really interesting. I don't know. Drake London would have 49 receiving yards on 3 receptions, and Kyle Pitts Sr. would have 37 receiving yards on 4 receptions. As for J.J. McCarthy, the aforementioned 2 interceptions, only 52.4% completion, and 158 yards. Again, peaks and valleys. You know, even if people want to dump on J.J. McCarthy and just say the crazy stuff about him, again, for any rookie quarterback, and again, technically any person who is getting their first NFL reps in like this, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle. Even with the Vikings being one of the best situations to be a part of, it ain't going to come naturally easy. And again, you people out there who were projecting this man to come right out of the gates and put together an MVP caliber campaign have to slow the fuck down. I'm like, hold on. Wait a second. Just wait. He is far from that right now. And to constantly expect quarterback after quarterback to reach that territory, it's not going to happen for everyone. Like, yeah, you can have quarterbacks get in situations where they go up with the best of the best and compete very well. We've seen that time and again. But at the end of the day, somebody's going to come out of this game the loser. Somebody is bound to. That is how the game works. Now, again, this was abhorrently bad. I get that. But at every sign of trouble, you can't just go ahead and say, "Oh my goodness, he disappointed me. He did not live up to my self-imposed expectations." You're reaching. That's on you. And you're unfairly projecting that towards him. Like, come on. You can't do that. You just can't. It's not fair. And it's hard not to play that game sometimes. But it's like, damn, you gotta relax. You have to. Alright. Okay. Alright, for the pair of Monday night games, can start out with the Texans and the Bucks. Now, again, I missed a good portion of this. But at least from all the action that I watched, it would get interesting. And honestly, with me noting that Kaleb Johnson was involved in a play, it probably doesn't start off all too well. Because later in this game, Kaleb Johnson would go out with an injury that was later revealed to be a torn pec. And he will now miss the rest of the season. Highly unfortunate for an individual who, alongside Vita Vea, makes for a very, very formidable duo of defensive tackles on that line alone. And again, the fact that they were able to do what they did to Bijan Robinson last week and come out victorious, the large reason for that. And just like that, within an instant, gone. That fucking sucks. Truly does. I mean, all the action seemed to go down, at least from an offensive standpoint, right as I was already involved in something totally different. All of the scoring would happen early. I mean, both teams were trying, though. Like, when I got in here, you had C.J. Stroud deliver an absolute dot over to Xavier Hutchinson from 20 yards out. But again, and I guess you could say that this was the case for both teams, they were not able to really finish drives at all. Now, both of these defenses are incredibly elite. A big shocker, right? No, legitimately. So, to expect expect a similar result to how the first matchup between C.J. Stroud and Baker Mayfield on these same two teams went in his rookie season, expecting that right now with these defenses being far more evolved than they've been at that point, that would have been a little bit of a stretch, to say the least. But again, effort was there. Like, C.J. Stroud would get down, and he would actually get a solid run in for 19 yards. But once more, not getting in close enough territory for Jaime Fairbairn forced them to punt. And then the Bucks, Baker Mayfield would be put in a very interesting spot himself. You know, he had some solid passes. He had some solid looks. But tell me why some of these routine misses were just coming from him. I mean, bro, you have Mike Evans deep. The connection is there, and you're just constantly overthrowing him. That's not a great sign. So they would punt there and go into the half up 14-10. Largely the same thing in the third quarter. I mean, talk about just paltry offense. If you are a person who is definitely high on like the offensive front, this would just be hard to go through. I mean, Sheldon Rankin certainly is still a force as a run stopper, and he would manage to get back and force a tackle on Baker Mayfield on this drive. But the Texans, although they would pick up 16 yards on a nice catch from Nico Collins, Taki Smith, their great rookie D-back from last season, would crash in on third down to sack C.J. Stroud and force them into a punt. You get on another Bucs drive here, and they try to establish the run a little bit, getting Bucky Irving in a little bit of a rhythm before trying to go for some deeper passes. But once more, even though these passes are seemingly routine, you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson making his presence felt, and you have Derek Stingley Jr. continuing to be, even though he's lined up against some of the best receivers on a night-to-night basis, still proving himself to be a top corner in the NFL. And they would punt yet again. Texans would go 3 and out, and then we would have a little bit of a drive going. The Bucs would get in very good position. This pass from Baker Mayfield was exceptional. You have a little bit of a back shoulder going because Derek Stingley Jr. is running right with Mike Evans. But to gain a little bit of separation, Mike Evans has to kind of fall a little downwards for the catch, stretches out, and makes the fucking play. Which is great, but on the ensuing play, on a deep shot that was truly there, it ended up being a miss. Yet still, they were able to overcome that as Rachaad White would actually get a few solid runs going, even though it's Bucky Irving's show. Nevertheless, another miss to Mike Evans, this time with Derek Stingley Jr. kind of forcing him to the boundary. Mike Evans almost caught this thing, but he was out of bounds. So you have to credit Derek Stingley Jr. for forcing that leverage and forcing him into the boundary at least. Chase McLaughlin would have a chance to at least put them up by 7, but he would miss the fucking kick. And then, in response to that, the Texans would have a drive of their own. I mean, this makes sense. And it was aided largely by a pretty good rub play. They had Jaden Higgins, the rookie, kind of delay a route on a play action. And by the time C.J. Stroud rolled out to his right, Jaden Higgins was free without any single Bucs defender accounting for him. He was able to scamper from 28 yards from there. It was a great play design. And they were able to make even more of it as Dalton Schultz would manage to get in and get a first down on a 16-yard catch. They get closer and closer to the goal line. But the goal line stand by the Bucs would kick in. Second down, no gain for Nick Chubb. Third down, they try to hit Nico Collins on a fade. No good. Fourth down, similar thing. C.J. Stroud throws it out of bounds. And we have the same score. Now, I couldn't understand them going for this here. I mean, anytime you can pin a team back deep in their own territory, you do it no matter what. But, my goodness. The Texans would still find a way to get as fortunate as possible because they would block a punt here. And yet still, not only was this a short drive, granted it probably could be, right? They didn't gain a single yard. They would have to settle for a field goal. Their points all the same. But you've got to take advantage of those drives when your defense is being opportunistic like that and your special teams is making a play. Thankfully, the defense continued to hang in there and force another 3 and out. But Jalen Noel would get an electric return to get them right in Bucs territory yet again. Now, as they mentioned in post, they missed some penalties. They missed some penalties on the Texans in this one. No lie. Illegal block to the back, holding the usual on the returns. But they weren't worried about that in that moment. And, I mean, the play stood, Noel had the crowd hyped up, and all of a sudden you've got a grand chance to go out and win this ball game. Nick Chubb would bang his head on the goalpost within 2 plays, getting a 25-yard rushing touchdown. But the way I was thinking about it, I was like, maybe you want to get down. I couldn't blame him in the moment because, you know, Nick Chubb, man, they've been sleeping on this man all this time, man. It has been a while since he's seen a run lane that wide open. And anytime you get a chance to do that, you're going to go for it. But I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh, there's no way. There's no way he just did that. They really had to get the 2-point conversion, though. And they failed to do that, which would end up coming back to bite them. Because on the other sideline, you were dealing with a man in Baker Mayfield who had accounted for the most clutch time touchdown passes since 2022. Yes, that is very true. And he would certainly show you why he's gotten this kind of clutch persona about himself now. I mean, like, literally, they get a good start, but they stagnate. Literally. A no gain from Bucky Irving followed by back-to-back incomplete passes, including one to Emeka Egbuka in which he actually had a good shot at catching it, but he kind of dropped it, and that was tough. So 4th down and 10 in their own territory. You have no other choice to go for it because you need a touchdown. This is for the game. And he scrambles out of the fucking pocket for 15 yards while getting flipped by C.J. Gardner-Johnson at pretty much the end of the play. Getting right back up, trying to call the play, and he gets one to Otten while he gets out of bounds. Then Bucky Irving would make his presence felt in the receiving game because one of the higher performing running backs amongst rookies in terms of receiving yardage out of the backfield last season would be primed to do something like that in that moment, making multiple people just look silly on this play. And before you knew it, they were on the 23-yard line, 2 timeouts at their disposal, and 42 seconds left. Now, at that point earlier on, I understood why the Texans wouldn't want to waste a timeout on this drive with the 2-minute warning kicking in. But the fact that they were still in bounds at this point, you have a running clock after 42 seconds, and you don't call your second timeout up until 2 plays later and with 9 seconds left to go in the game. Truly inexplicable stuff. But at that point, they were on 2-yard line. So in a goal-to-go situation, they leaned on Rachaad White to run it into the end zone. And he was able to do that. They failed to get the 2-point conversion either. But by that point, they already handled their business. They effectively won the game right there. And the ensuing kickoff would see the return man smartly not get down and end the game that way. 20-19 victory for the Bucs on Monday Night Football. They have an NFL long streak right now amongst active streaks of this kind in terms of 2-0 starts to the season with 5 straight. It's also a franchise record for them. Baker Mayfield would get 215 passing yards in this game on 65.8% completion and 2 touchdowns. Although it took him 38 passes to do so. Again, like I said, a lot of them were ones that he probably could have had back. They're just hard misses. So, although he led them on the clutch drive here, that matters the most. But, Probably could have won it a little more, I guess. Bucky Irving and Rachaad White would each have 71 rushing yards and 65 rushing yards, respectively. Mike Evans would have 56 receiving yards on 5 receptions, and Bucky Irving would also have 50 yards out of the backfield, while Sterling Shepard would have 34 receiving yards on 4 receptions, and Emeka Egbuka would have 29 yards, a touchdown. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown and 4 receptions. As for the Texans, it was a rough one for C.J. Stroud, too, to say the least. A touchdown pass and 207 passing yards on 54.2% completion. I'm really not sure what's going on there. He's going to have to get that together eventually. Nick Chubb would have 43 rushing yards and a touchdown on 12 carries. And Nico Collins would have 52 receiving yards and a touchdown on 3 receptions. Although Woody Marks, rookie running back out of USC, would also get a 37-yard catch, interestingly enough. Moving on to the Chargers and Raiders game. And to be honest, man, I'm not going to lie to you. While I would not want to be so one-sided in terms of talking about one team over the other, unless it came in the event of an absolute blowout. There's one thing you gotta understand, okay? This Chargers defense, as a unit, might actually be fucking dangerous. You know, we started out this video talking about the way the Packers defense was performing. But them, even with Khalil Mack now being set to be out for the next few weeks with an elbow injury, even with Deion Henley, the new captain of the squad, having a fucking illness and being initially ruled out of the game, come in and light up the stat sheet while just being a dominant force in his own capacity out there. And then not to mention Derwin James Jr. still just being an elite, versatile safety. And one of the best in the league to do it right now. At all 3 levels, they are a threat. To the point where even with them legitimately forcing the Raiders to keep everything short, and I kid you not, everything was kept short. Any time that they tried to throw the ball deep, crickets. You want to know what happened when that was the case? When Geno Smith, who obviously, I mean, come on, it's Geno Smith, man, you know what I'm saying? But whenever he threw more than 10 air yards down the field, on the very first play of the game, you have him trying to rocket a pass over the middle of the field. And in comes fucking Alohi Gilman, diving straight at the ball and forcing a deflection before it gets right into the hands of the aforementioned Deion Henley for an interception. Including that pass, Geno Smith legitimately went 0 of 10 and threw 3 interceptions on pass attempts that were more than 10 air yards down the field. They locked that Raiders offense up. They wanted to try to stretch the ball around, and granted, they had to get more creative with it. They had Jacoby Myers on a few occasions take shorter routes. Brock Bowers, they were trying to place him all over the field playing this game of chess and getting him in favorable spots for a few receptions. But even he was held a little bit in check. For him to go off the way he did last week and then come out only having 5 receptions and 38 yards in this game has got to be a win for that Chargers defense. And then he literally just made them look weak. Like, to end off the game, it was already bad enough that they were down like this. Not only did they force that interception, which Derwin James literally swat with perfect coverage into the hands of Dante Jackson, and then have to go 3-and-out on offense later on. It would force a turnover on downs in which you just had Geno Smith trying to extend the play, and Deion Henley ran his ass down, literally delayed the blitz. And then as soon as he saw the right and ideal moment to pressure him, he fucking pressured him. It made matters even worse than, next play, following that, Max Crosby comes out and punches the ball out of fucking Amarian Hampton's hands. Now, granted, he was bobbling around with the football anyways. Didn't really do a great job of getting the handoff from Herbert. But nonetheless, at that moment, you're thinking, hey, maybe there's a little sign of life here. Maybe you can do something. No. They forced another turnover on downs with Geno Smith just scrambling all around in the backfield trying to find somebody to throw the ball to, and he was forced to throw it out of bounds. When a defense can make you do that consistently, that's scary. And again, I don't know about their odds of winning the division, but the Chargers are in a really good spot right now. Really good spot, because you have tiebreakers over both of these teams, in the Raiders and the Chiefs. That is an elite spot to be in. And while their offense did cool down a little bit by the end of the ball game, they weren't devoid of production overall. I mean, Justin Herbert is legitimately trying to make an MVP case out here. Now, again, this could cool off, but, man, he's actually playing well for once. I mean, he obviously got the connection to Ladd McConkey going a few different times in this ball game. But by getting Keenan Allen a touchdown catch earlier in the game, and also just throwing a fucking dart down the field from fucking 60 yards out to Quentin Johnston in this one. We're finally beginning to see, I guess, the talent in his game pair up with actual winning. Now, again, you don't want to see them tail off like that towards the end of the game and put up just 3 points in the second half. But that is kind of the nature of a Greg Roman-style offense and a defense largely influenced by Michigan people like Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter as their coordinator. We're not asking you to always be on your A game offensively, because defensively, we're going to make sure that you get it back more often than you don't. And that's exactly what the Chargers did here. Not giving up a single offensive touchdown in this game. Matter of fact, let me just take a look at this, because I just want to make sure, and I got this right before I say what I'm about to say. Okay. Yeah, so from what I'm seeing here, just 2 drives. Just 2 drives entered the red zone. The Raiders offense when it comes to Chargers territory. 2 drives in this game. That was it. And they still did not break in those moments, giving up any sort of life at all. On the rare occasions that did happen, the Raiders did not do a good enough job of making them pay for it. And the Chargers would win 20-9 on Monday night. All right. Yeah, it was just flat out bad for the Raiders. Ashton Genty also still hasn't gotten it going again. I'm not really that concerned with it. He'll get there with time. But for Geno Smith, again, just a 55.8% completion, 43 passing attempts, 3 interceptions. That's a little bit stinky. That is not sustainable for winning. Jacoby Myers would have 68 receiving yards on 6 catches. As for the Chargers, Justin Herbert had 242 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 70.4% completion. Also led the team in rushing. That, again, is probably something you want to clean up on, but we'll see. I mean, they pulled Amarian Hampton from the game after that fumble and let Harris get some burn. I can't really blame him. Quentin Johnston, we get 71 receiving yards on 3 receptions per touchdown. Keenan Allen will get 61 receiving yards on 5 catches and the aforementioned touchdown. And Matt McConkey would get 48 yards on 5 catches. All right. To move on to some of the other action here. Yeah, I'm not trying to be one-sided. But again, when it comes to this Lions-Bears game, my gosh. Ben Johnson? You spent all that time with the Lions offense doing this to teams on a consistent basis for the past 2 years? This was supposed to be the ultimate test of whether or not you needed them or they needed you more. You had to put up a much better fight than this. The score was 52-14 with time to, 52-21 rather, with time to spare in this fucking fourth quarter. That was the score before the halfway point. They could have done much worse if they truly wanted to. But every single player who's been asked about it is swearing that they weren't trying to do anything to Ben Johnson here. They were just trying to go out and win a football game. Outside of Jameson Williams, he just flat out said, oh yeah, he's a traitor. And I mean, his case would be helped. He would get a touchdown in the middle of this slaughter, bringing in 108 receiving yards on the day on 2 catches of his own. Damn, that's tough. What's even tougher is that Amon-Ra St. Brown just continues to be legitimately one of the best wide receivers in the league. That's not a crazy statement to say. That's been proven over the past few seasons. Hat trick for him with 9 catches and 115 yards with 3 touchdowns. Meanwhile, rushing, they ran for a combined 177 yards, with Jahmyr Gibbs accounting for 94 and a touchdown, while Montgomery also had a touchdown. And Jared Goff, when he has the time to step back and throw, like, the efficiency numbers will legitimately paint the picture that he is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. 82.1% completion on 23 of 28 passes, 334 yards, and he had as many touchdown passes, 5 as incompletions. Those are legitimately top 5 quarterback type numbers right there. And I'm not even bullshitting you. But again, this Bears defense just took a shellacking. And it didn't help that their offense was just so slow yet again. Now, for Rome Odunze, it wasn't a slow game for him by any means. He had 7 receptions for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns, accounting for both of Caleb Williams' touchdown passes. But, man, you have to, again, legitimately keep pace. And that might be hard, for now at least, being in just week 2 of this thing. But, man, you knew this was going all around. in the media as soon as this game was scheduled for next season. And all I can say here is that you've got a lot to think about if you are Chicago. When you face off against this team later on in the season in Chicago, let you go out like this there. No. Get back to the drawing board. Figure it out. Because everything that legitimately could have gone wrong in this game for the most part did if you are in their position. And this cannot happen again. Or there will be questions that need to be answered. Truly. Alright. 49ers Saints. Brock Purdy is out for several weeks. In comes Mac Jones to get into one of the developments here for the next 2 to 5. And I thought there was no chance in hell he was going to win this fucking game. I'm literally out here saying, like, good luck. No. He would win this game against the Saints. Now, granted, they're not the best of teams to go up against. But they won it in relatively convincing fashion. It did take a garbage time touchdown for the Saints to make this thing much closer than it appeared. But at the same time, this was not the worst possible game for them. It didn't help that they missed a field goal on the first drive. But when looking at it, even without watching it, the fact that Spencer Rattler completed 73.5% of his passes, threw for 207 yards, threw 3 touchdown passes, that ain't half bad. Alvin Kamara consistently being a force for them, accounting for 27 total touches and 120 yards. Chris Olave getting 54 yards here. Rashid Shaheed getting 52 receiving yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. Distributing the ball around that well and keeping turnovers to a minimum is a sign, if nothing else. I don't know how legitimate it would be, but at this point, with you being anywhere involved with the Saints, you got to take anything that you can get. As for the 49ers, Mac Jones would have 279 passing yards and 3 touchdowns on 66.7% completion, with Christian McCaffrey also accounting for 19 total touches and 107 yards with a touchdown catch. Jaywan Jennings had 5 receptions and 89 yards for a touchdown as well. All right. This Pats-Dolphins game actually ended up being interesting. And I thought for a second that since this is on CBS, I'm like, okay, I don't know if they have any additional coverage at like the 405, 425 slot, but I was thinking that the way this game was panning out, they were going to put that on like bonus coverage or something. They did not. And by that exact same time, the Dolphins would turn the ball over on downs. It was whacked out, though. You had a little bit of everything. You had some missed field goals and PATs and stuff. You had them going band for band on kickoff returns as Malik Washington would get an electric punt return for fucking 74 yards here. And then the very next play would see Antonio Gibson get a 90-yard kick return touchdown of his own to give the Patriots back the lead and give them that lead without them ever really having to lose it. Tua Tagovailoa, even with an interception here, played his best of a game as he could have. 315 yards and 32 pass attempts for him with 2 touchdowns and that interception. Tyreek Hill had 6 receptions and 109 yards, including the stat that you've been hearing for all this time, his first catch of over 30 yards in over a year. Wild that had not happened since the week 1 opener of last season against Jacksonville. But crazy times. Crazy times. And he is definitely, although I'm not necessarily addressing that in the developments, everybody who's heard about Tyreek Hill within the last week knows how crazy shit is getting in his personal life right now. As for De'Von Achane, the rushing attack for the team is still weak. And again, I just don't understand. Like, they've got to get their run blocking together. But at least in the passing game, it was much more of a threat. Had a 29-yard touchdown catch, I believe, and had 92 receiving yards on 8 catches. Jaylen Waddle also had 68 receiving yards and 5 catches with a touchdown. As for Drake May, this is also a weird game from the Patriots standpoint. Their most productive wide receiver was fucking Ramondre Stevenson, and they won, and Drake May might have been at his most efficient. 19 of 23 passing and 230 yards with 2 touchdown passes for him. Also a rushing touchdown on the ground. Again, I don't understand why they keep giving Stevenson a higher share of the touches. It boggles my mind. But he did have fucking 142 combined yards on 16 touches. Just a weird one to look into. Not gonna lie. All right, Rams Titans. Aside from this cross-body throw that Cam Ward had to Alec Ayamanor for a touchdown, and again, that was promptly being guarded by none other than Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Shout out to Emmanuel Forbes Jr. It was largely another slow day for the Titans. Simply put. In this one, just 175 passing yards in that aforementioned touchdown, on 57.6% completion for Cam Ward, while Calvin Ridley had 57 receiving yards on 3 catches, and Alec Ayamanor had the aforementioned touchdown catch and 56 receiving yards on 4 catches. But tell me why. Tell me, bro. This is something I gotta try to understand. So again, we're at the same spot when it comes to the fucking Tyler Lockett shit. Like, bro, again, I get that he's an older wide receiver, but with a person who's had some of the more reliable hands in the NFL in the past decade, you're not involving him more in the offense, and you're giving him just 3 targets and treating him like he's some kind of fucking scrub. Honestly, at that point, then what did you bring him over here for? Why did you sign him in free agency if this is how you were going to treat him? Where all of these younger players and inexperienced guys who clearly have issues with reining in the ball in their own right, how are you not trying to involve somebody who literally could be a safety valve that Cameron Ward could use? There's no logic to that. Now, again, that's not the sole reason why they lost the game. But again, it just doesn't help. That is constantly being repeated right now. Like, damn, come on, man. As for the Rams, Matthew Stafford would have 298 yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception. While it was a rougher day at the office for Kyron Williams, Pucanacua would not only have a 45-yard rushing touchdown on the day, but also had a 91 yards receiving. Blake Corum also got in the end zone and had 44 rushing yards, interestingly enough. Devontae Adams had a touchdown catch and 106 yards on 6 catches. All right. Bills-Jets was a similar slaughter, and there is also development out of this one because not only would Justin Fields be taken out of the game with a concussion, but a report just came in that mentioned that he will now be out for the next week per Aaron Glenn. So that's unfortunate. I mean, you're going to take a concussion pretty seriously, and you don't want to rush Justin Fields back out there if he ain't in the proper condition. Even if he is currently on a $20 million per year deal, this is still a large investment that you have kind of indebted yourselves to. You have to make sure that he's taken care of. So I understand that. Either way, I don't know when exactly Justin Fields was hit, because this game wasn't live, but it might not have made a difference on the outcome. Anyways, Jimmy cooked. I saw this man run all the way to the left side of the field, juking out defenders and trucking people, and then reverse field in a split second on a 44-yard run. And on the day, by and large, he had 2 rushing touchdowns and 132 yards on the ground by himself on 21 carries, also adding 3 yards receiving. Didn't have to be a great day passing for Josh Allen at all. It wasn't. 56% completion and 148 yards. After he literally damn near had 100 more yards than that in the fourth quarter of the game last week. But again, anytime you can take things a little lighter, I suppose, you're more than free to do that if you so choose. The Jets, no matter what, couldn't stop the Bills at all. I mean, they had 224 yards on the ground. Either way. And the Jets, though Breece Hall slowed down a little bit, as a team, they still had 100 yards rushing. Now, their passing game was a bit more glaring. I mean, even with Tyrod Taylor coming in here, they didn't even crack 85 passing yards. Think about that. And Garrett Wilson was the only receiver on the team to have more than 10 yards. More than 20 yards, more than 30 yards, more than 40 yards. He was the outright leader in the game for receiving yards with 50. While no other person on his team had more than 9? Ooh. So yeah, when you look and see that this is a 30-10 ball game, although it was a pretty interesting way to get there, you can understand why that would happen, I would believe. This Panthers-Cardinals game was incredibly unique. And the fact that the Cardinals were up by as much as 24 in this ball game following a James Conner rushing touchdown, while almost letting the Panthers come back in this game, might bring on some cause for pause here. I'm not gonna lie. He got that damn close, and there was even more intrigue to it. Actually, they ended up recovering the onside kick. They had a tremendous chance to take the lead if they wanted to, but they stagnated, and they would turn the ball over on downs, unfortunately. Man, that would have been pretty hilarious if the Cardinals would have actually allowed them to score on that possession. Although they could have won it in much more convincing fashion, I think the Cardinals would take a win. They're off to an undefeated start. That's always nice, but yeah, that's pretty revealing when you can allow them to creep back into a ball game like that. Dealing with a Panthers team, they got blown out against the Jags just last week. For the Cardinals, Kyler Murray had 68% completion and 220 passing yards with a touchdown and an interception. Their run game was largely ineffective. Same goes for the Panthers. But, at least in the receiving game, Trey McBride had 6 receptions and 78 yards. Elijah Higgins had 2 receptions and 45 yards. And Trey Benson had 4 receptions and 30 yards, with Marvin Harrison Jr. putting up 2 receptions and 27 yards. As for the Panthers, Bryce Young, even though, again, the rushing game wasn't there, in what universe should the Panthers really be making him throw 55 times? Why? Why is that happening? That's a problem. Even with all that being said, he would get 328 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and also threw a pick. Tyrell McMillan led all wide receivers in the game with his first 100-yard game on 6 catches. Ja'Tavion Sanders had 7 receptions and 54 yards, and Hunter Renfrow had 7 receptions and 48 yards with 2 touchdown passes. Old reliable himself. Gotta love that. All right, and then Broncos Colts. 2 main things to pinpoint here. Jonathan Taylor is a Broncos killer. One of the only rushers last season to get over 100 rushing yards on them. And he certainly did more than his fair share of damage in this ball game. It kept that defense honest, and it opened up the floodgates for Daniel Jones to continue slicing and dicing through defenses. Somehow, he kept that going, and he protected the football in this game. Yet, the Broncos would hold the lead for most of the third quarter, especially following a J.K. Dobbins rushing touchdown. But the Colts were slowly chipping away at the ball game with field goal after field goal. And then things would come to a head at pretty much the end of the game. Lutz somehow missed the field goal, giving the Colts a chance to get the ball back, and they ran it. They kept their passes short, and they ran it some more, getting into a shot at a field goal at least. I don't imagine that Spencer Schrader's leg is that deep, and he did, at least from what I saw, what I was tracking, missed a 60-yard field goal that would have won them the game. However, illegal leverage was called on the defense, and it moved them up 15 yards, giving Spencer Schrader another shot at kicking it. And he made that one, giving the Colts a bit of an upset victory here. And somehow, some way, they are 2-0 right now in rolling. Daniel Jones, a touchdown pass in 316 passing yards on 67.6% completion, with a rushing touchdown in there as well. Again, I don't know how consistent that is. I don't really think he will be able to keep this up. But it does look much and much worse for Anthony Richardson Sr. if he continues to keep this going. And again, mind you, he's only signed for a year. Jonathan Taylor had 25 rushes and 165 yards in this game, along with 50 yards out of the backfield and a touchdown catch. That's exceptional fucking work by him. Tyler Warren continues to be a focal point. And again, will probably emerge as a top tight end for them. 4 receptions and 79 yards in this game. Alec Pierce also had 4 receptions for 68 yards, while Josh Downs had 6 receptions for 51 yards. As for the Broncos, Bo Nix had 206 passing yards and 3 touchdowns with an interception on 73.3% completion. J.K. Dobbins had 76 rushing yards and the aforementioned touchdown run. Troy Franklin, on the other hand, had 9 combined touches for 100 total yards and a touchdown catch. Outside of him, though, talk about distributing the ball. Marvin Mims, Tyler Beatty, Pat Bryant, the rookie, R.J. Harvey, Evan Ingram, Adam Trotman, Cortland Sutton, and Trent Sherfield Sr. all had catches in this game. But you should be trying to get Cortland Sutton the ball more. Again, didn't watch the game. Don't know how they were covering him. But for him to have just a catch in 6 yards is kind of concerning. It's kind of concerning. That's all I'm saying. That's all. All right, so that is all of the game action. But into some other situations here the 49ers would sign EDDY FUCKING. Yeah. And, like, I guess I understand it. No, EDDY FUCKING does not have a strong leg in his own right. But when it comes to accuracy, he's definitely much further along than Jake fucking Moody was. And is legitimately one of the best kickers in NFL history by accuracy standpoint. So it does make sense to get him for cheap and sign him to a short-term deal. You don't really lose anything there. And you at least gain a kicker that within like 50 yards or so, you can rely upon. That is all the 49ers are asking for at this point. That's it. So it's fair. Prior to the game, Terrell Williams, the defensive coordinator for the Patriots, would like take some time away because he was dealing with an unforeseen medical situation. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but hopefully that is nothing too detrimental to his health. DaRon Bland is set to miss multiple weeks due to a foot injury. That would certainly hurt them in this game as well, with the way that both Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson were able to just tag team that Cowboys defense consistently. I mean, if it wasn't Trayvon Diggs getting burned, it was Kyer Elam being on the receiving end of a few pretty good catches from those guys. And I don't even know if DaRon Bland being out there would have helped things out. But I could almost assure you that it would be much more difficult for Russell Wilson to just get whatever he wanted if you had an elite cover corner like DaRon Bland out there. The Giants would sign Xavier Gipson, weirdly enough, after he was cut by the Jets. So, I mean, that's a benefit to him. He's not really needing to move anytime soon. But, wow, like, that's a turn. I already mentioned that Devin Witherspoon is going to be questionable. Nick Emanwori was also out for this Steelers game. Hopefully he comes back. I haven't heard any update on him, but hopefully he does. That would be great. Like, I want to see him go out and play. Kyler Gordon, Kene Nwangwu, and Joey Porter Jr. would all deal with hamstring injuries. All of them. And be out for their respective games. Like, what? That's not good. Okay. The Patriots would trade Ja'Lynn Polk and a 2028 7th rounder to New Orleans in exchange for a 2027 6th rounder. That was fast. I suppose they must really like Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas. The fact that Boutte had been dealing with gambling stuff just a few years back and was literally in danger of being removed from the team is pretty wild to think about now that he's kind of worked his way back into this roster and legitimately become a staple for them. And with them now adding Stephon Diggs to the mix, I guess, with Ja'Lynn Polk being hurt and not really being accustomed to this system, it was going to be hard for him to ever really get immersed in it. I don't know how it would go for him in New Orleans, but I mean, hey, with as weak as that core can be, like, you could have a solid shot at emerging as least, at least like a third or fourth string guy there. So I guess that's not too bad. The Cowboys would sign Tyler Smith to a 4-year, $96 million deal with $80 million guaranteed. Again, this is another one that I don't really have much of a problem with, but damn, if only you would have just like literally everyone and anyone else before Micah Parsons, bro. Everyone. Now, I get that Tyler Smith has had a good start to his NFL career, but my goodness, man. There's still something that perplexes me. All right, the Eagles would waive Lewis Cine from their practice squad. Cooper Beebe, another Cowboy center, would miss, or is set to miss, the next 6 to 8 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And they were immediately feeling it because I think their backup centers in this game, but against the Giants, had like a bad snap exchange with Dak Prescott. And again, I think that was the play in which he fumbled. And again, that was a drive killer right there. And BB knew it. And they like panned over to him on the sideline as that play was going down. So that's tough. The Rams would have an interesting situation developing with Sean McVay because he is currently dealing with a torn plantar fascia. It happened to him on the sideline, of course, and that's just kind of wild. So I don't even really know how that would go. Don't know if there's an update yet on whether or not he'd be ready to take the headset or whether he actually needs some time to like rest up from this. But we'll see what happens. Like that's highly unfortunate. The Jags would release Darnell Savage, and earlier today, per Adam Schefter, the Commanders would sign Preston Smith. Obviously, Preston Smith has been a Redskin before. Don't come for me. I'm just being honest. That was the team name at the time that he was playing for them. I've got to be truthful there. And, I mean, honestly, at that point in his career, he was regarded as a much better edge rusher than he might be right now. But you're looking for anything that you can get at this point if you are the Commanders, because you probably don't feel an impulse to go as crazy as you probably would. Like, this is a guy who has averaged in his career, obviously, first 4 years he was in Washington, and has averaged in his 10 years at least around a good 7 sacks or so a year. Like, that's pretty solid stuff. You're not trying to go all out for somebody expensive. And honestly, that's not even really on the market right now. Unless you find a way, which is probably not going to happen now that you already made this move from Marshawn Lattimore last trade deadline. You'd have to bank on somebody being willing to give up on one of their pass rushers in or near the trade deadline this season. And I don't know how that would be looking right now. But at least with available ones on the market, you're not going to find many that are worth that much. So to get somebody who, again, the organization on a broader level knows, though again, that was with a different regime, as bad as that regime was, as long as you can continue to add to it. Because you already got Von Miller, you already have DaRon Payne still there. So you've just got to find different ways to cut the cost. I understand. I get it. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.